Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. Today we're starting out here in town, outside of the concrete automatic maker that we've got here, and I really want to turn this thing into a build today because one of the things that really sticks out in the skyline of Founders Forge, no matter where you're standing, is this giant concrete maker contraption in the sky. I kind of want to conceal that today, and I want to look into a little bit of the theory of how we go about blast-proofing this building, because as you will know if you've seen the video in which we make these concrete makers, this one tends to drop a lot of TNT. The problem with decorating anything with TNT is that TNT has a bit of a random direction to it, and it has quite a wide radius in which the explosion will affect certain types of blocks. And so, in order to build something up around this structure, we're going to want to make sure that this structure is adequately blast-proofed so that if we end up using the concrete maker, bits and pieces of it will not just start falling off. I don't want massive holes in my build every time I end up using the concrete maker. Thankfully, there are a couple of good solutions to this. The first and most obvious one being, of course, obsidian, because obsidian is one of the most blast-resistant blocks in the game. It has the longest time to break with a pickaxe and is, generally speaking, the toughest material that players can acquire in Minecraft. There are, of course, tougher materials which are only available to creative players, like bedrock. End portal frames cannot be blown up or really mined at all, and there are barrier blocks, which are basically invisible blocks designed to be invisible walls in maps and stuff like that, which are, of course, only available to creative players, and they are the strongest blocks in the game. But bedrock and end portal frames and stuff like that all have a blast resistance of something like 18 million. It is a very, very ludicrously high number, and of course it's designed so that even if you adjusted the mechanics of the game, you would still not really be able to break them all that much. Obsidian, by contrast, has a blast resistance of 6,000, which is not all that much compared to 18 million, but of course it's still meant to be obtainable in survival, and so it has a lower blast resistance, and that means it also kind of calculates into stuff like how long it takes to break it with a pickaxe. So we could coat the entire inside of the Alchemist's Guild, which is what I'm going to be building around the concrete maker, in obsidian. But of course, that would be a bit of a pain, and it also wouldn't look very nice. Obsidian is one of those blocks that, while obviously the texture has its purposes, I don't feel like filling up an entire interior of a building with this is really going to help all that much. So I'm not going to use obsidian for this. There are a couple of other things which do have a similar blast resistance to obsidian though, and one of those things, surprisingly, is anvils. If you try and explode an anvil with a block of TNT, you will find that, like obsidian, it does not get destroyed by that explosion. It is still a block and not an entity like an armor stand, so it's not going to be thrown a great distance. It's not going to be, like, knocked back by the TNT, but of course, if the TNT broke the block underneath an anvil, you would end up with a cascade of anvils. You'd have them all falling down because they're affected by gravity, and if you stood underneath any of them, it would probably drop on you and kill you, so that's not really something we want to happen. Anvils are a little too inconvenient for this. They're also very costly in terms of iron, and while the iron farm is now back up and running again, I have a huge supply of blocks of iron here. I don't think anvils are really the right thing for the job. As far as actual physical blocks go, though, that leaves us with very few options remaining, because outside of obsidian, there is nothing in the game which will not be affected by a TNT blast at point-blank range. Even endstone, which is probably the toughest of the materials that you will be able to acquire outside of stuff like obsidian and anvils, only has a blast resistance of 45. You see, we're decreasing the blast resistance here by orders of magnitude, and even though endstone does have a pretty high blast resistance compared to stuff like, I don't know, dirt and grass, it is still going to get destroyed if exploded by TNT at point-blank range. The other thing about endstone is that, once again, like obsidian, it's not particularly pretty to build with. I don't want to coat the inside of the Alchemist's Guild with endstone. But luckily, this being Minecraft and there being a variety of materials available to us, we need to look outside of blocks, and we need to take a look at water, because water, being a fluid, has a pretty high blast resistance, or it is not really affected by TNT. Water cannot be destroyed by TNT. It can only be destroyed by picking it up with a bucket or by another block being placed in the same spot as the water itself. And as you may have seen at other points in this series, water can be used to shield yourself from a variety of explosions, and entities in that area will still take a little bit of damage, but water will even prevent damage from stuff like end crystals and charged creepers. So TNT at that point is going to be no problem at all. And what I think we can do for the inside of the Alchemist's Guild, because we already have a basin of water here collecting all of the concrete drops, what we can do is have columns of water dangling from the sides and ending up in this basin here. And that will allow us to have basically a wall of water around the outside, blast-proofing any of the exterior of the building from these TNT drops. And just to demonstrate quite how good water is at blocking TNT explosions, we're going to place some water in front of this grass block here. We're going to set off some TNT on top of this. I'm going to place a few other grass blocks around the outside at an equivalent distance, but without the shielding of water. And watch what happens when we set off this TNT and explode it. Boom! All of the grass blocks around there are destroyed. The obsidian actually blocks some of the blocks that are a little bit further down here, but as you can see, all of those grass blocks around there were obliterated, and this one here has remained in place because that is the power of water. Water has a blast resistance of 500, which is enough to prevent any explosion damage from getting through a curtain of water and hitting blocks on the other side. Perfect for what we want to do here, and I think all we'll need to do is dress up the Alchemist's Guild building with a few columns of water on the inside. Of course, with this being a redstone contraption, we are going to have to be a little bit careful about where we place these columns of water, but they don't really need to start super far up. As far as I can remember, the TNT actually explodes towards the middle of this space here, so I think we'll probably only need maybe 7 or 8 blocks high of water, perhaps a little higher, just to make sure that we cover the top half of the radius of the sphere of the explosion of the TNT, but we will probably not have to fill this entire thing up with water, which means we could take a few creative liberties with the top half of the building as well, without having to worry about just filling the entire thing up with water. But I think from here, we should just need to pillar up a few blocks, make sure there are water sources placed around the outside with flowing water, and as long as that doesn't affect the flow of these water streams too much, then we should be okay. Another cool thing we can do here is take advantage of waterlogging mechanics, and I'm going to do that using these stairs. I'll show you in just a second what I mean, but we're going to need to place rows of stairs around the outside of this tank here, and this is going to prevent the water streams from falling into the center here, because I realized it's kind of dependent on each of these 4 sources of water in the corners here being the only sources of water. If we ended up with water flowing down into here, it's going to create a water stream of another 7 or 8 blocks, and that's going to go directly over the hoppers and stop the items from collecting in there. So what we want to do is trap the water on the outside here, and we're going to use these stairs to do that. So by adding a block to the front of the stair block here, after I've waterlogged it, we've got a trapdoor here like we had in the villager breeder / carrot farm over there, but any kind of block will do. It could be, you know, a stone brick block or something like that. We can prevent the water from flowing out of here, and this waterlogged stair block will actually act as a water source for the falling water to be collected in, and so you can have these little waterlogged blocks around the outside, almost like troughs, to stop the water from flowing out to either side. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that. We're going to pillar up here, and we are going to have to surround a block up here, say a water source in this spot here. We're going to have to surround that with blocks to make sure that it doesn't fall out on all sides. But all we should really need to do is have blocks on this side and on this side, because this entire row of stairs is going to be waterlogged. But if I place a water source here and have it fall down into there like that, you'll notice it isn't falling over the sides in either direction, because it counts this block here as a block that the water can flow into, and therefore it doesn't create a mess by flowing over the sides. So we're going to do this the entire way along, and that's why I put these blocks on the corners as well, so that the waterlogged stairs will not leak water out of the sides. Of course, we could always reorient the stairs so they're like that on the corners if we wanted to take those side corner blocks out, but that's not a huge issue here. And in the end, there wasn't quite as much running around as I thought, because if you put water sources in 2 of these adjacent blocks, they will actually fill in the second water source. It's really quite strange, because you don't expect these to work like regular water source blocks do, and if you put a single source block on its own, you don't tend to find it looking like it's leaking over into the blocks next door if they are waterloggable, but then you end up with water sources being created if you place them 1 block apart each time, and so you don't need to make a temporary infinite water source even. It also has the weird side effect that because these blocks here are waterlogged, the water is kind of pretending like it runs from those blocks up there, even though the stairs themselves don't actually have a way for the water to leak out. And so you'll find these 2 blocks on the corners, if you're doing something like this, they look like they are flowing water. So for whatever reason, it looks like it isn't a proper water source. Trust me, it is, and that should all behave perfectly fine once we have water flowing down into this block. Okay, I think this is about the height we want to be to drop the water streams down, and we're actually going to reverse this pattern of stairs and trapdoors so that we have inverted stairs all kind of facing inwards. And then we can add trapdoors to the outsides of these, like so, and that will mean that the water stream that comes out of these stairs can only flow downwards. So if I had a bucket of water on me, that would be perfect, wouldn't it, to be able to demonstrate this? So I think from the top here, all we should need to do is place a bucket of water, shift-click it so it gets waterlogged in this block, and that should just send a column of water straight down, which will not fall to either side. That's absolutely perfect. And we'll just need to repeat this pattern all the way along, having a stair block facing in this way and a trapdoor attached to the front of it, and we get perfect flowing columns of water that are going to blast-proof this whole building without the need to add obsidian. Unfortunately, with these downwards-facing blocks, because the water is flowing downwards, it's not going to create a water source in between the 2 of them, so I don't get a free water source there. Luckily for me, I have thought ahead a little bit and brought a whole bunch of buckets of water, so I guess the only thing we can do really here is just go along the whole row, filling in every single block here with a bucket of water until we have the entire thing waterlogged in columns. And there we go. And this whole thing looks really, really quite cool. It's a giant cube of water which does not flow outside of its boundaries. And the fact that we've got that made out of stone brick stairs kind of hides the fact that these are all waterlogged blocks. It's quite a neat illusion, but hopefully everything that we build around the outside of this now should be blast-proofed from any TNT explosions, which means we can get on and decorate this thing finally and get this unsightly mess out of the sky and into a really nice looking building. And so I feel like now we've spent enough of this episode blabbering on about blast protection, we could do that in the form of a time lapse. Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed the time-lapse, and this building is not entirely finished, but I'm really happy with the results so far. It's very much one of our feature buildings here. It doesn't look as much like the other houses. We've got different uses of materials and kind of a different style too. I really like the slope of the roof here. Now the roof is a little bit messy. I do need to tidy it up a little bit off camera because there are some slopes on some sides which don't match the others exactly, and the back of the building is a little bit different to the way the front is built. They look kind of similar, but there are some subtle differences which made building the back half of the roof a little bit of a challenge. But overall, what we've got here is a nice surround for the building, which should hopefully be safe from any TNT explosions that occur inside. And I feel like that glass pane at the front there and the same one on the back is probably the test that we want to take here. Although the one on the back is actually significantly further away from the tank than the one on the front is. The tank is actually several blocks away, which is possibly why some of this mismeasurement stuff occurred in the first place. But I'm going to hop up here. The idea is that hopefully I'll be able to actually be able to walk up a ladder or something like that to get inside of here now that we actually have a building around the Alchemist's Guild. And the plan is, I wanted this build to be more eccentric than it currently looks, but we want to have stuff like, you know, projected towers and possibly even observatory, a dome or something like that sticking out of the top of this building and making it look a little bit more kind of thrown together than it is right now. Right now it's very symmetrical, very organized. I want it to feel a little bit more chaotic. But right now what I want to do is test out the concrete maker, if I can actually get into the right position for it, and make sure that the TNT explosions are not going to blow out the front there, proving once and for all that this building is going to be blast proof. So we're going to activate the lever here. That's immediately going to set a TNT off, and hopefully we can take a look at this as it falls. It goes boom, and nothing around the outside breaks. And I'm going to prove that a little bit more here by making some of the concrete, because I have a lot of concrete here that I'm planning on using for the spaceships that we're going to be building in our end hub spaceport, and that is kind of where I want to be. I want to have a ton of concrete to use for that project before we kick it off. So I'm going to be using this building quite regularly in the next little while, and we're going to need to have those TNTs falling. Well, there we go, folks. All the concrete has been converted. We have a little bit left in the machine waiting for that final piece of TNT to fall and to break the rest of it. I'm not sure if it's going to, because I'm not sure if the hopper clock is still ticking over, if it has one more note to play. Yep, there we go. Looks like we should get one more TNT falling down here. Boom, there we go. And this has had ample opportunities to blow up anything that I built in today's episode. And as we come around to the front, you can see that it has not. So this thing is entirely blast proof. No blocks are left on the ground around here. Everything is all taken care of and looking pretty good. I really like how this build came together, and I'm really happy that we now have a ton of green concrete trickling into the machine here, ready to be used. So that is going to be it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.